we are back at it. I'm spending a lot of time out west nowadays. Had some good guests on and have another really interesting and kind of excited to hear about the story and the journey, because that's what we're about, is the journey. And I had Aaron reach out to me on social media, and we like that. We like to talk, and we want to know what you guys think and what you're about. And we've been talking through messaging and talked on the phone a couple times. And so Aaron Kelly is with us today, and he's from Missoula, Montana. And I'll tell you a quickie, real quick. You guys know that Dale Cameron, I had his dogs, and Dale lived outside of Missoula and Stevensville, and I've actually been there a couple times. So this one kind of was like, yeah, and got to talking about it, and I'm really interested to hear his story, because Aaron is just getting into hunting. He's only in it a year and a half, and through our conversations, he's been very successful. So we're going to tap into that, especially for you new guys that are getting out and starting hound hunting, how we can help ourselves along and save some of the trials and tribulations that some of us old school guys have went through the hard way, like the school of hard knocks, because we go through it. And Aaron's been very successful. So we're going to tap into what he's learned, what's helped him, and talk a little bit about his hunting. And we've got an interesting thing that we're going to talk about that would have set most of us back, and he persevered through that and carried on. And that's something that also was very interesting to me. So Aaron Kelly from Missoula, Montana. How is everything out your way this evening?
It's going well, Heath. Appreciate you letting me come on here and talk with you. Big fan of the podcast and all the podcast creators. So it's always a cool feeling to be able to be on an episode and be a part of all this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely glad to have you. Like I said, it's about the journey, and the journey's a process, and it should never end. And
right.
I want to hear about your beginning, and then 10 years from now, I want to see where you stand. And then if I'm still kicking in 20 years, maybe we could catch back up. But yeah, I mean, that's what it's about. And we want to hear about it. So Aaron, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like I said, you and I have discussed it. I know a little bit. You were born and raised in Missoula?
Yep. So born in Missoula, and my family moved west of Missoula, and we've been living in this country ever since. So got a lot of family around here, and thankfully we have some pretty amazing outdoor opportunity. And because of that, I think that's obviously where the reason I'm where I'm at today, mm-hmm. and doing what I do.
I'm kind of envious of you guys. Like the biggest part of me wants to be out west. I made my first trip out there in 2005, and I fell in love with it. But I like to be outdoors, and I don't care if it's fishing or hunting or just out walking in the forest and stuff with my dogs or by myself. But the vast amount of country that you guys have is what draws me. I like to be that explorer. I like to be that. I want to go somewhere where nobody else has been, and that's right. One of the things.
Well, and thankfully, this part of the state too has an absolute plethora of public land, so mm-hmm. you're able to do that, right? There's lots of states and other areas in Montana that have a ton of private land ownership, and the western side of the state has much more public land. So it allows for someone with that drive and that ambition to go out and really do exactly what you said, explore and truly just get to live that outdoor lifestyle.
Yes, I'm envious. I got to say, that's who I am. I just can't. I don't have the area to roam like you guys. Like we just don't have it. We got chunks, but I can walk through that chunk in a day very easily, and that's not pushing myself. If you know, thousands of acres or a couple thousand acres, nothing like what you guys have. So born and raised in Missoula, and you've been an outdoorsman since you was able to do that.
Right. Yeah. So, I kind of got into hunting around 12 years of age. My dad took me out, and it was strictly deer and elk hunting. And, we usually did pretty good over in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And we got some pretty good deer and elk populations. But as of late, predators have had a big impact on some once very healthy deer and elk populations. So still good hunting, but you can definitely feel the effects of an increased predator population.
Yeah.
So,
and we're going to talk about that too. But before we get too much further ahead, so any of our podcasts, and I always like to ask the listeners is there any one of them that you favor, or is there any one of them that you can say that one really either resonated with me or that I've got the most out of that one?
I feel like when it comes to this podcast, I'm very much I'm attracted to a lot of the pup training and dog training episodes because I'm somebody that comes from a family that has never really had much interaction with dogs, and so getting into the hound hunting world, all of the dog training that it takes to run hounds was completely alien to me. Mm-hmm. And so hopping on this podcast and listening to those episodes and finding any kind of information I could online was really, really big, especially when I did not yet have a mentor in the hound hunting community.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people favor those episodes on the pups. And hopefully we can continue to do more of them. So, Aaron, what got you into the hounds? What flipped your trigger and hey, I want some dogs?
Well, Heath, I think I've always had a soft spot for dogs. And so even just having a dog has always been super attractive to me, right? That companionship that you get from a dog, the loyalty that you can get from a dog is just, you can't find it many places. And so, so obviously I've always wanted to have a dog, since I was a little kid, but there's something fascinating about a working dog, and, I had some friends that had bird dogs and they were always going off about, how much they were just taken aback by what these dogs do. And just being very open about their experiences it just further, I think, made me want to go down the route of hound hunting because I knew I wanted a dog. And I, after seeing videos online of houndsmen working their dogs, I'm like, man, big game hunting is where I want to be. This is something that I gotta at least try and see if hey, is this for me? Is this what it looks like it is, or is this all just, is this something that looks great and it's really way harder, than what it looks like on the surface. So I think it was just a mix of, knowing some people around this area that did it, hearing their experiences, and then finding content online really perked my interest. And I finally just decided, you know what, I'm never going to do this unless I just jump head first, so that's kind of how
So you didn't have anybody, so you didn't go on a lion hunt or a bear hunt. You just had the feeling hey, dogs are something that I want to be a part of my life. And what better way to do it than, chase animals around.
Well, pretty much, but I will say that was the kind of like the initial spark. And then a few years after really getting that spark, I'd got a job back over here near Missoula. And, I've had the means to acquire dogs. And, I think being in the right place for hounds too is definitely a thing. I think there's a lot of guys out there, they really want to get a dog, but they're just not in the right place, whether it's because their living situation or finances or whatever. But finally the stars aligned for me, where I had an opportunity to actually, get some dogs out on some property. And so before I made that move, I contacted a good friend of mine, Brad Jones, who is a captain in the Montana National Guard. And he has a bunch of blue ticks. He runs a bunch of Smoky River blue ticks. And I kept telling him, man, I'm super interested. I'd really like to kind of see what this is all about. And I was kind of begging him to take me for a few weeks. And finally he's like, all right, let's go. I'm coming to you. So we came out, he came out my direction, and within 30 minutes of running road, we found a lion track. And I ended up actually harvesting that lion. And from that point on, and I was hooked. And it wasn't even because of the fact that I harvested a lion. What really intrigued me and caught my attention was just watching the interaction and the dynamic between Brad and his hounds, and how he kind of treated each one of them a little differently and picked up on the little nuances of each individual dog. And man, he did a lot, you do a lot of things similarly, but man, it was really, really neat to just see him work his pack of dogs. And from that point on, that was like when I knew, like, this is something I want to do.
So did you get your first dog from Brad?
I did. Yeah.
Yep.
So he actually, one of his better dogs, Fade, man, she's an impressive dog. But yeah, he had a litter shortly after that. And I don't know if it was his intention, like, hey, I got to bring this guy out with me. Got to get a couple pups off my hands. And, but, no, he ended up asking if I wanted a pup. And I, of course, starstruck, I said, yeah, absolutely. And I ended up acquiring a female Smoky River blue tick from him. And that was a start of the journey. Let me tell you, Heath.
So, yeah. So now when you started, they just opened the Spring Bear last season, right?
Yes, they did.
For dogs, right? So when you started, were you able to run bear with your dogs also, or was it strictly just cats?
So when I acquired my first pup, that was in the month of December. And we were kind of getting word that the legislative bodies were passing this bill, and it was a very real possibility that we would have the ability to run our hounds just the upcoming spring season. So it was a lot of talk and anticipation, and everything was aligning legislatively for that to go through. And so when I first got the pup, it was kind of like we were in a little bit of a waiting mode, but things looked real good. And when it did pass, I was obviously very excited because I had a bunch of younger dogs and a good old pup trainer to kick the bear season off. So I was super, super excited going into the bear season that April.
Yep. So you ended up with your female, and then was you running her by herself, or I kind of know the story, but
yeah.
So how did you start acquiring other dogs, and how did you? Well, I know what you did. What did just tell us how you started acquiring dogs and how important it was that you were able to actually acquire a finished dog that helped bring your young dogs to where they needed to be?
Right. So, like I said, I got that pup in December, and our cat season over here runs until April 14th. And honestly, actually, the first few months, I was actually, I think it's really easy for a novice houndsman or someone just getting into it to be really discouraged, because I had gotten that pup and I had worked a lot of, I read a few books on puppy training and scent training, and then I, hearing from other houndsmen and other houndsmen in the community, taking advice on doing drags and whatnot. I started doing that with my pups, and so I started working my younger dog, my younger blue tick, quite a bit, and then a good buddy of mine heard that I was getting into the hound game, and he asked, "Hey, I got some leopard cur puppies." And at that point, I was, like I said, I didn't really have an idea what I was doing. And I know a lot of guys will advise against getting a bunch of puppies right off the bat, but I was like, sure, yeah, I'll take another pup. And so I ended up with 2 puppies right off the bat. And I was kind of pulling my hair out at times, because I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm ever going to get anything going. Sometimes they impress me on a drag. Other times it's like, just trying to get them zoned in was difficult. But I had my buddy Brad around, who told me, just continue the exposure, and continue with your effort. And, oftentimes that will help more than not working them or kind of just giving up. And so I kept working them and not finding any cat tracks. Like I said, I started getting pretty disappointed and wondering, what am I doing wrong? And, Brad offered a piece of literature called Trained by a Hound Dog by Ed Vance. He told me, hey, you need to check this book out, because he's like, there's a lot of parallels going on right now with you and this houndsman. And I think there's a lot of valuable insight that'll get you going right. And so I picked up that book, and I finished that book within days, and I was just hooked. And the overlying theme in that book was, you need a old finished dog to help you with your younger dogs. And so once I found that out, I was saved up a little bit of money, and I started searching, and I contacted a guy named Joe Bebout, and he lives over southwest Montana, Whitehall area, and he's got a pretty good pack of dogs. He runs with Jake Herrick, which is on that Mountain Man show.
Oh yeah,
and so they got some real good dogs down there. And anyways, he offered me a 7-year-old plot hound, and that plot hound, he told me over the phone, he's like, this dog is worth every penny. She can run bobcat, bear, lion, everything you need. And he since I was getting into it, he was like, I'm going to cut you a deal. And so I was obviously pretty appreciative of that deal, and drove a couple hours over there, pick up Tink, which is that plot's name. And, at first I'm like, man, I end up paying $1,000 down. And then, if I liked her, it'd be another $1,000. And, first I was kind of getting a little buyer's remorse. I'm like, is this the right thing to do? $1,000 and a lot of money. And so, of course I know now that hounds can go for a lot more than that, but,
yeah.
Anyways, I brought her back, and it was kind of perfect timing, because I got her about a month before the season. So I did drags with Tink and my 2 pups. And the nice thing was, when I was doing those drags, Tink was obviously trailing and treeing and getting those pups excited. So that was huge. That I didn't have that excitement originally. So even on the drags, I would notice improvement having a finished dog. And the bear season started, and it kind of, we didn't in April over here, bears don't move around, quite like they do in May and June as it gets warmer. So you're not going to have them cross roads as much, or they'll be still hanging with, around their dens and whatnot. So I decided to take the dogs and go on a shed hunt, and kind of knowing that maybe there's a chance that we could come across something fresh and find a couple So I go up near only a couple miles from my house on a shed hunt, and just a few minutes into that shed hunt, tank blows up, and I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on here? And before I know it, my pups are joining in, and they're running circles around me, I felt like, and about 600 yards away from me, they treed up, and I walked in there, and before I knew it, I had my first bear of the year. So
nice.
It was literally somebody that, and looking back on it, and I still don't know a whole lot about the game, and I'm learning a whole lot, but it was such a exciting feeling to see the dogs work something like that, from a guy that's never done anything remotely close to that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to back up and ask you a few questions on what you just said.
Yeah.
Do you know what the plot, how that plot was bred, or you don't have any clue?
I don't have any clue. I haven't ever asked that question, no.
Yep. And, something that I think a lot of people, even people that's experienced, and I've been doing this 28 years, so this coming fall will be 29 for me. The Journey on Houndsman XP has teamed up with One TDC. This dual-action support for oral health and mobility in our dogs. This unique supplement is so effective that it is recommended by top veterinarian experts worldwide to maintain and improve our dogs' health in 4 different areas. Their oral health, hips, joints, and muscles, skin, coat, energy, and recovery. Guys, I've been using this product for the last 6 months, and it has been a game changer for me. If you're looking for something to help with the overall health of your dog, go to worksowell.com and give this product a try. It is highly recommended by Houndsman XP here on The Journey. I went through a divorce. I let a lot of my dogs go. I kept a couple young dogs that ended up making average dogs. They weren't what I was looking for. I could catch a bear, a couple bear with them, but they lacked in some of the areas that I knew that I wanted to make me be more successful. So I ended up buying a couple of Kemp dogs off Mike Kemp, and I still had 2 dogs that were still the bloodline that I'd been hunting for 20-some years, 25 years. But Aaron, I did the same thing you did. Like, I know how to train dogs. I have caught bears throughout my game. I mean, I've caught game throughout my life, but I knew the importance and the value of having that dog to help me help them, because there's things that dog trains them that I can't. So I bought a blue dog, Van Johnson bred blue dog, Jack, and my dogs were a year old when I bought Jack, and he helped them get started. And then, like you said, then they started kind of taking over the races. Jack was always there, but they started moving. They started getting to the front and doing things that I wanted to see. And then last year, I lost him, and we still don't know exactly what happened, but I still wasn't at the point where, I mean, I can catch game without him, but I went and got me another old, and when I say old dog, it's a 6-year-old black and tan. It's crossed up dog. She looks like a black and tan, but she still tails on them. Like, my dogs will run a yoke. Like, they're not perfect. They're dogs. But she's the dog that when they go down there and do something they're not supposed to, she's back at my side, and I don't have to think twice about what's going on.
Right.
So the importance of that, what I'm saying is, even though you're a beginner and a little over a year in, you made a wise decision that even people with 28 years in are still, I still do that. But again, I kind of started over. My old dog had passed away. I had a couple dogs that weren't satisfying me. Like I said, they catch some game, but they were not consistent. They didn't have the motor that I wanted. They didn't have the stick or grit or whatever you want to say. Grit can be determined a lot of different ways, but they just weren't. They were okay. They were a pleasure to be around. Super good around the house. Everything but, and this takes me back to what you said before, and I'm going to throw a Clay Newcomb term out there. The dogs at this house have got to be a utilitarian dog. Mm-hmm. They got to have a purpose. And I mean, that function, I have police dogs. I've got one, my shepherd's laying right here beside me right now, sprawled out on the floor. My Dutchie's out in the kennel. They have a purpose. And, I've got the hounds. I've got 10 hounds outside, and they have a purpose. Man. They give me pleasure. They give me drive. They motivate me. And that's just how I'm wired. But just to kind of go back to what we were talking about, you made a very wise decision in getting an old dog to help you help them, because there's some things you can't teach. You Absolutely. Can't teach that dog how to pick up a lose. Nope. You can't teach that dog how to go in and bay up a bad bear or a cat. I don't know how your cats operate, but I've found, especially with the dogs that I have now, they've got pretty good stick, but they're not overly aggressive. That's what I want. And I have found that my younger dogs, like I've got some year-old and some 2-year-olds now, like I'm getting one that's getting beat up pretty regularly, but the rest of them have watched him old dog stand back, bay, work a bear, work him from the back end. When he takes off, they stay in the back side of him. And I can't teach that to my dogs.
No.
I just can't do it. So, man, kudos to you. So, you got your dogs, you treat your first bear. Now where you at? Now what's going on? Springtime, so bear season's in.
Yep, bear season's in, and I'm obviously I've tried, I've done some research, and I've seen that a lot of people, the guys that were catching the most bear had some dogs that could rig bear, right? Which is throwing them on your dog box and driving down a road, and those dogs will let you know when a bear is, a bear's crossed through here. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, how the heck does a guy like me go about figuring that out? Because I got an older dog that'll you could road them, and if they cross something, she could take it. But it's a little different. I mean, I think, as he's roading your dog versus rigging a dog, and you can cover so much more country rigging a dog, and you can have those multiple bear days when you got rigged dogs. And so, and with the goal of getting into the hunting industry, as a guide, I figured, I'm going to have to figure out how to get some rig dogs. And so I was looking around. I was catching bears free cast here and there. So hiking down a creek bottom or side hilling, doing some quote unquote shed hunting and hoping that the dogs would come across a bear around. And, that worked, but I'm like, man, I want to be able to catch more game, and I got to figure out how to. And so I started looking online for rig dogs, and I realized how expensive they were. And I'm like, wow, I can't afford paying for rig dogs. And then this guy reached out to me and said he had some started dogs, and one of them seemed like one of the dogs seemed like he was trying to, he was wanting a rig for him. And so he cut me a deal, and I ended up driving all the way down to Phoenix. Oh, wow. Or I think it's Scottsdale, just north of Phoenix.
Yep.
But I drove down there, and I picked up those dogs, and Oh, well, on that, let me tell you, that trip wasn't really the funnest because, well, the AC went out when I was just before hitting Arizona, and man, it was hot. So it was like a near 100-degree day when I went down there to pick them dogs up. And I think when those dogs got in my truck, they're like, "This is the guy you're selling us to?" Jeez. You know,
Yeah.
so anyways.
What kind were they?
So one of them, one was a plot, and the other was a black and tan.
Okay. Yep.
And they'd been on some lion, but mainly bear. And so I picked them, got a good deal on them, and brought them back. And I kind of did the same thing. I wasn't really confident, and I put them on the top of my dog box, and just kind of without much of an idea, started driving road, and I just didn't know when to let them out or how. And I should have asked, looking back on it, I should have asked that guy, how do these dogs work? How do you work them? Can we hunt for, a day together to see what you do with the, cause you gotta learn how some people work their dogs. And so anyways, I was kind of like, dang it, didn't ask the right questions. So I was kind of back at square one, roading the dogs. And then I started thinking about, well, if this Tink dog I got, this old plot that I have, is my tattletale dog, I can throw those two, started rig dogs on top and mitigate with her on what they're striking on. And so I'd go down the roads, and it started to turn out, when those two blew up, I would put Tink out and let her get off. And if she liked whatever, she could smell what they were smelling and took off, and that was a bear. And so I started using Tink as my dog, my like that tail dog, to be like, hey, is this target game or is this non-target game? Because at first I think those dogs had been sitting in a kennel for a while. And you know how dogs can get when they're sitting, they get excited. They get a big whiff of an elk or something that they might pop off for a little bit. And so I was able to kind of mitigate that and just get them going on bear. And before you know it, your dogs are learning, hey, we're only let out on this. And I didn't even have to use Tink.
Did you not rig her, or were you just putting her down when they struck?
I put her down when they struck because for whatever reason, she did not do much barking off of the box. It was interesting. So that's what I did. I tried it out, and the experiment kind of proved to be successul.
So was that something that you figured out, or did somebody kind of tip you that, hey, you can do this and you can be successful this way?
So I think it was a little bit of both. So, Joe had told me, Tink, she's a tattletale dog. And I figured that those two had a general idea of, hey, this is, on what a bear scent was like. And they would strike on it. But because they were not technically finished, and they were just kind of started rig dogs, kind of getting into it. And there was a few times in the beginning when I didn't use Tink as that tail dog, that those two that I'd got from Arizona, I'd see whitetail deer they were chasing. I'd trash races, right? So I started realizing when I use Tink, she's keeping them honest. And before I knew it, I didn't have to rely on within several weeks is all it took. Those dogs were, it was just kind of like almost when you train a pup. Some dogs start a lot earlier, and you get them on the good game, target game with a finished dog. You have some pups that get it from the bat, and they almost it's almost like trash breaking them, just putting them on all the good game. And now obviously you're with a young dog, you're going to have some hiccups and some train wrecks. But those pups that I had, that blue tick and that leopard cur, I mean, one was 6 months when I started the bear season. The other one was 7.5, and they were up in the front with all the older dogs from the get go. And they were definitely compared to one of the pups I have now, an early starters for sure.
And you got pretty lucky to have. I mean,
oh man, extremely.
I mean, the amount of dogs that you go through just to get what you ended up with is sometimes it can be astronomical, but
Yeah.
you fared pretty well in that end of it.
Oh, absolutely. That blue tick that I'd got from Brad Jones, Stormy was her name. She was rigging bear at 8.5 months for me, and which was pretty incredible. Leading races, just had all the drive in the world that you'd want. She would never gave up on a race, and like I said, she started running her at 6 months, and well before I lost her to wolves, which we'll get into later. She just did everything I wanted and did it better as the days went on. I had her leading races, but she just had an awesome, tight, slim, athletic build that does really well in the steep country that I'm in. But yeah, no, I think that it all started the foundation of my pack was that Tink dog, that plot dog, and then acquiring those started bear dogs. I mean, man, it just got me off to a rock star start that I never in a million years thought I would have. Which kind of got me in a little bit of trouble, in the sense that I started doing real well. So I think that the advice from other houndsmen, some of it I like cautionary tales about the dense wolf population that we have in the area. I've never seen one of them, never had any incidences. I'm good. So I started chasing numbers a little bit. I mean, I was excited and pushing the dogs as much as I could. And that's what eventually I think got me into the situation. Well, you and I had discussed. So no, it was quite an experience, Heath. Like, I mean, it was, what I had in that bear season was, I mean, two total extremes, some awesome successes and some big time lows,
Right. So, well, let's roll over into that. So did that incident happen during bear season or lion season?
It happened during the bear season.
Also, it happened in the spring.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, just go ahead and walk us through that. I mean, I know it's probably painful to keep repeating it, but it's a part of life.
So, I mean, I guess for the people that don't know much on wolves, and I don't know a whole lot, but some general information on them is during the first few months of the year, like January, February, wolves start rutting. And so then you'll get a lot of increased wolf activity, and you notice that during the cat season. You're seeing a lot of wolf sign and covering a lot more area, and those areas more frequently. Well, in March and April, wolves generally have pups, and that's when they're denning up, and so they're in more specific areas, and they're not, from what I know, right, and is they're not quite covering the ground that they normally are because they got pups in a specific spot. And well, of course, like I told you, I wasn't really thinking much of that, and I hadn't had any encounters with the wolves, even though I've been told by guys that used to be houndsmen or had ran dogs in the past, that, you do got to be careful in the country I'm in, of wolves. They pose a big threat to your dogs. And, so anyways, yeah, the season went really well. I caught a lot of bears, and coming into June, it was actually June 11th. It was another routine day. It actually was it was a real wet and rainy day. And, I had, met up with some good friends of mine. And they all had a few dogs, and we decided to go up to an area we'd ran consistently throughout the season. And we right off the bat, we had, within 30 minutes of our hunt, we'd caught a small 5-foot bear. And then, another hour later, we had struck another bear, or rigged another bear off the road, and caught a sow and some cubs. And so, at that point, we're like, man, the dogs are just firing on all cylinders. And it was just something cool to see. And so we decided, like, we wanted to, try to go for a third bear, or at least a third tree. And we tried to loop. We were in an area, Namodi, which crosses, a lot of these drainages around here, they have, they loop into each other. And so we tried to loop around to the adjacent drainage, and there was logging equipment in our way. So we obviously turned around, and we're like, well, if we get a strike on the way out, awesome. If we don't, we don't. And of course we got a red hot strike. The dogs were basically trying to jump off the truck. So that was awesome. And we stopped and found a big, fresh bear track heading, that crossed the road and headed up towards the top of the ridge that we were on. And so we let dogs go, and I let, Stormy, that blue tick pup, and Tink go on that one. And they went with about 3 other dogs, that were my friends' hounds, and they all went together and just went roaring up and over that ridge. And then we decided, well, let's just let the rest of them go. This is a hot track. Let's get some dogs in on this tree. So we unloaded our boxes, and we had, I think, about 14 dogs on that race. And they all were going good, lined out on that scent, and they dropped down pretty deep into the adjacent drainage, and we lost comms. The area's so steep over there. When those dogs get up on the ridge top and go over, I mean, it doesn't matter how good of an antenna you have, you're losing comms. And so we knew the area. We drive back up the drainage and found a gated road that took us into the adjacent drainage. And we had regained our comms, and seen all of our dogs. Half of the dogs, the first group, were treed up, and the others were making their way to them from the top of the ridge. And then we lost comms, and a few minutes regained them again. And all of our dogs, it was the weirdest thing. I still remember it pretty vividly to this day. No bark indicators on any dog. And all the dogs that were on that tree were with at least 50 to 100 yards separated from one another, dead silent, not moving. And I'm like, what in the heck? And the weirdest thing is, too, all the dogs that were behind them in that second group started just sprinting the hell out of there. And I'm just like, what in the heck is going on? And I looked over to my buddy Jake, and I said, I mean, do you think there's wolves in here? And he's, oh, no, he was trying to be real optimistic about it, but you could tell he was nervous too. And I'm like, I don't know, man, this ain't right. We're not hearing nothing. We're in the same draw as these dogs. And by the time I got about, 300-400 yards away from that creek bottom where they were all scattered and separated, still not hearing nothing, I started sprinting down there, man. I tore up my camo. I wear glasses. I broke my glasses going down there. So then I'm going down there halfway blind, and get down that creek bottom, and dogs were strewn out across the creek bottom, and is not a fun sight to see. And I think coming up to the first dog I found was Tink, and
so you lost him.
That hit me the hardest because, that dog, from what Joe told me, she was not really a people dog. It was just, she was an interesting hound. A lot of hounds are real affectionate and what. She just wasn't quite that way, but for some reason she really bonded to me really well. And Joe was, he was really happy about that and pretty taken aback. And it was tough when a dog that I'd picked up and had learned to trust me a lot and work hard for me, to find her dead, and then also have the realization that if she's dead, then all those other dogs in this draw are dead too, was pretty tough. It was a tough pill to swallow. But yeah, it was not ideal, and it was a hard
lesson,
pretty tough learning experience for me.
How many dogs did you lose that day?
We lost 5 dogs, and 3 dogs were real badly injured.
Wow. I mean, I can't imagine having to deal with that. I mean, I know some guys that are locally from here that go to Wisconsin, and I know one of the older gentlemen, he's now passed away, but it's been a couple years ago. He lost all 4. He just took 4 dogs. He lost all 4 of them while he was up there. I mean, it cleaned him out. He was done.
That's terrible.
Man, I feel for you guys, and I mean, it's just a horrible situation that, that you have to deal with that. I mean, it's a part of nature, and I mean, a wolf is a huge predator. I mean, a huge predator. But, well, I appreciate you sharing that story with us, because, I mean, like I said, how did you overcome? So you how many dogs did you lose personally? Tink and your female.
Tink and Stormy.
Okay.
Yep.
And then and your buddy lost 3.
And then between 2 of my buddies, they lost 3.
Okay.
Yep.
So how did being a new hunter, I mean, this is your first season, this is your first, your first dogs. Where were you at mentally, and what was it that said, Aaron, like, we're going to dust ourselves off, pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and we're going to continue on?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think getting down to those dogs, and then hiking them out of there on my back 3 miles back to the truck, that really can do a number on a guy, especially for a softie like myself. When it comes to dogs, man, I'm pretty soft. I'm hard on them when I need to be, but man, they know I love them. And so it really had me wanting to get out, to be honest. I was like, man, if this is how it's going to be, raising up pups from just the youngest of ages and losing them to wolves, obviously, it was weighing on me, just because I knew how many wolves we had in the area. And I'm like, man, this could be more consistent than just this one. This could happen more than just, this instance. And I don't know, I told myself, man, I can't go through this again and again and again and just keep losing dogs that mean a lot to me and that I bond with. And so, initially, like I said, I was looking to get out, and I started asking around, like talking to people, like, hey, you want a bear dog? I'll sell it to you, fairly cheap, and just not really wanting to get back, not really wanting to continue on. And it wasn't until, a few weeks after this incident, like I was pretty heavily set on getting out. And a buddy of mine, Norman Yoder, he was the fellow who sold me that leopard cur. He reached out to me and said, man, Aaron, like, I've never seen somebody as ambitious and just going into this with full head of steam. Like, he's like, this is something, like, I can see that's just in you. Like, this is something that you really, truly enjoy, and you cannot let an incident like this completely take you away something that you love. He's like, you have to, and other houndsmen have had to deal with wolves, and there's things you can do to try to mitigate, wolves being in your area. But he's like, at the end of the day, it is always like you are always playing a game of Russian roulette. And he's like, so he just told me that he told me that I need to believe it or not, go out sooner rather than later. He's like, get out there as soon as you can, because he's like, I've had buddies that they waited and then they just never got into it again. And so I took his advice, went back out, and well, we treat a bear, and man, it was a weird feeling not having those dogs. And it was almost enough to be like, man, this ain't worth it. But there was something in it still enough excitement, and almost there was like some promise of okay, I have dogs that can still do it, and I can raise some new dogs up and still have a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be more cautious, and even that, it's, you never know if being cautious is enough. But I just decided to, you know what, this is something I wanted to do, and I can't let the fact that we have a predator like a wolf or wolves in the area that can easily wipe out an entire pack any given
Mm-hmm.
day. You can't let that get in the way of doing what you love. And so I just tried to get as much information from others in the area on how to mitigate the risks of or the risks that are associated in running dogs in wolf country.
So you lost two. How long did it take you to start replacing those dogs?
So that's actually a pretty funny question. I think that I was, I was pretty down in the dumps because of losing those dogs. So I lost two dogs and I added three pretty quick. And so I was just trying, the more dogs, the more it took it off my mind, right. I guess, so to speak. So I got some pups back pretty quick, but I was definitely, the dynamic, the thing that changed is I could still tree bears after that, but it was almost like, because there was a dynamic shift, it wasn't as smooth. The races weren't as smooth. I wasn't putting up as many bears. And so it was definitely like taking a couple of steps back.
Right.
But I held on to the fact that I had dogs that they knew what they were doing well enough that I could have, there's potential for some rock star young dogs to come along and get trained up by primarily another hound, and a little bit of me, and get them going again. And so I just kind of held on to the hope, and I still do, that I get back to where I was. So
then that took you into lion season, right?
Yeah.
And you had your first season. You're in your second season now with lion, right?
So I'm in my second season, but the first season I had the pups, I actually had the hardest of times finding cat tracks, and it was kind of on the tail end of the season, and I didn't, just with work and whatnot, wasn't able to get out, so I didn't even get I didn't even tree a single cat with the dogs I had the first lion season. And so this season that is going on right now is really the first cat season that I was actually able to get to put up some lions and bobcats.
Yeah, I mean, I've been keeping up with you on social media, and it looks like you've had a pretty good season.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the typical couple a week, one a day. I don't know what that is for you guys, but it looks like you've had some pretty good success.
Yeah. No, this year, so far I kind of had a goal, like, and I try not to get too carried away with things like this, but I'm like, man, it'd be awesome to put up, 5 to 10 lions within the season. I think that if I really try to work these dogs and get out as much as I can, that's doable with our lion population around here. And I ended up, so far I've put up 19 lions this season.
Oh wow.
And 2 bobcats. I haven't I've had some snowmobile trouble, so I haven't been able to. Bobcats seem to be like they're a little higher. I mean, you'll get them down in the creek bottoms and stuff, but with the amount of trappers we got that trap bobcat, the ones that make it down into the creek bottoms generally end up in a cubby. So if you really want to do well with running bobcats around here, you need to get up into some higher country. And like I said, because of my snowmobile kind of being out of commission, I've just been kind of resorted to just having to run creek bottoms and hoofing it to the dogs as fast as I can. So,
yeah.
But
are you cutting any wolf tracks while you're out?
Yes. Yeah, so that's the nice thing about running dogs in the snow is you can obviously see a lot more track and sign easier than you can in the springtime. And I do see a ton of wolf sign. And there's actually, there's, like I said, there's lots of cats out this way in western and central Montana. But the issue that a lot of houndsmen have is, you could catch 20, 30, 40 or more cats in a year. But because you have wolves in the same area, that's going to greatly reduce how often you're going to let your dogs out on a track.
Yeah.
It would. So that's something I've had to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't get within, I don't know how long how far away you got to get, but I'd be on the other side of that. So you rebounded off of the spring hunt. You got into the cat season. You've had a good cat season. So what dogs do you have now? Like, how many dogs you have?
So I got 8 hounds right now. Mm-hmm. So I got quite a few, but I do have a lot of young blood right now.
Did I see you have a litter of pups?
Yeah, I actually, the older Walker dog I have, I had an accidental litter. So as much as I hate to admit it, it was a complete accident. It was between that Walker dog.
Is that the topper dog from Andy?
Yep. From Andy. Yep. Her name's Piper, and she's 10 years old. And, I don't know how the heck it happened. I must have not been paying attention, but my Smoky River blue tick that I have here, Sam, got him from Brad as well. Mm-hmm. He got out and hooked up with her. So now I got a litter of 5.
You got a topper Smoky River cross.
Yeah. And you know what? I honestly didn't know how easy, didn't think it was going to be very easy to get rid or even sell those dogs. And, I listed them for $300 a piece. And within the first 2 days, I had them all sold. Mm-hmm. It seems to be like a pretty popular cross around here. So I had no issues.
To go back real quick, and we'll have to start wrapping this up. But so when you got your Smoky River blue dog, probably unbeknownst to you, but if I was looking for a rig dog, I would have no problem going in that direction. Like, I've seen some really nice Smoky River dogs. They seem to have plenty of grit. They trail good. Most of them have decent mouths on them, and they're nice tree dogs. And I know that they're not all that way, but like when you ended up with that line, like I said, probably your buddy knew, but you didn't go wrong by getting into that line of dogs. And we talked about Andy Jensen with the topper again. I bought a female off Andy in 2009. She was out of Topper and Dot, and I know he made that cross several times. But she was a natural starting dog, and that's what the 3 dogs that I told you that were my average dog, they were out of her, and there was just like I said, they were nice hounds. Like, for most people, they would have been really satisfied with them. Right. Because I'm like you, my first dog set the bar so high and my expectations so high, like I have a hard time getting there. Like, it's
Right.
like, oh, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking for. And if you don't, if you don't have, X and Y, then anyway. But anyway, long story short. But so, Aaron, before we get off, I mean, we could talk more about this. And you've told us a little bit about your struggles. Like, what are some things that's helped you along the way? And, you've come from a critical incident, recovered, having a very successful season. Tell some guys that are just getting into this journey, like, tell us some lessons learned, and we can, we've talked about one, some things that you've done that's helped you, or you feel that's helped you, and some struggles that you have or are having that you're still working through.
Right.
And I know that's a 3-part question, but
oh man, that's a little loaded, but I'll do my best to answer it. Well, I think right off the bat, when you get into something, you have to be receptive to people who have had experience in whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. And that, I think that's just like in a general rule in life, somebody that's been doing a specific thing for a long period of time, they're generally going to have some sort of valuable information. And so, getting into it all, you want to make sure that you're receptive to criticism, because, you don't want to it's easy for guys to start liking their dog and then focusing on every little good thing or any little detail that could, or just any little trait or thing that their dogs do, and try to have a positive spin on it. But when somebody who has experience tells you, hey, this could be better, or telling you just flat out like, hey, your dog isn't doing this, or you should look for, certain things that'll help you out. Like, you just be receptive to any information that people that have been in the game are willing to give you. And don't be afraid to ask questions, because I've asked, I'm still asking 1,000,001 questions to guys that have been doing this for a lot longer than I have, been doing it most of their lives. And they have a plethora of information in their noggin that they're willing to give to you, so don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't I guess make sure to take criticism, mm-hmm. because it's real easy for you to act like your dogs are so great and they don't do anything wrong. And I think that the people, you have blowhards in every kind of community. So you do have to do a little bit of sifting, personal sifting on your end, and the people that have the success, you take your information, try to get your information from them. Ed Vance has it, he discusses it several times in his book, Trained by a Hound Dog, how he went out with guys that they talked themselves up and they talked their packs up, and they really thought they knew a lot, but he ended up, they never had success with those kinds of people. And so there is a little bit of personal sifting through information that is given to you that you have to do in your own part. But you before you know it, you'll find guys that have had success, and just pick their brains. That's something that really, really helped me. And don't be afraid to get into the books even, mm-hmm. and find whatever kind of valuable information they might have for you, and make sure to always try to find that information, but apply it and see what works for you.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I learned through the law enforcement side of my training is you have to keep an open mind. And if you keep an open mind, you're going to be 10 times more successful, because like you said, somebody's been doing it longer than you. Somebody's got more experience than you. And just because they don't do it the same way as you doesn't mean that their method, their way, their philosophy is not successful.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm very particular about the way I do things, but there's people that don't hunt the way I do, don't do the things I do, and they catch more bear than I do. It's just the way it is, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think keeping an open mind is a big key to it. I like to read. You know, you've picked up the books. You know, I was blessed at a very early stage in my hound hunting career to have a very good mentor that jerks a knot in me sometimes when I need it. Like, he sets me straight sometimes because I'll go off on a tangent and then he'll just, you know, yeah, you need to think about that. That's not, you know, you need those type of people. And sometimes honesty hurts, right? It does.
Oh man. Yeah, it does.
But yeah. And so that's some of the things that's helped you be successful.
Right.
Just tell us one thing that you feel like that you struggle with, or that you could use help to become better at what you're doing.
Oh man. I think that, you know, knowing the exact science behind what your dogs do would go a long ways with me, you know, because especially when you get into it, you see your dogs act particular ways. Your old dogs do certain things, and they train your younger dogs by doing those certain things. And I think that something that would aid me in my journey is to listen to more podcast episodes that really highlight and target the science behind what and why your dogs are doing what they're doing. And I think I recently saw there was an episode on that that was produced by this podcast on like scent trailing or something. Like, is that ring a bell at all, Heath?
Yeah, I mean, I've had Jeff Shetler on, and you know, Jeff Shetler is, like, not just in the United States. I mean, he is sought after throughout the world. He travels, he's good at what he does. I mean, yes, do we agree with everything? No, but the majority of what he says, he can back it up with proof. You know,
right?
He's worked it. He's done it. I mean, he's got his hands on trailing dogs every day, multiple dogs every day. That is his life.
Right.
But yes, that's probably Jeff you're talking about.
Yeah. So I'd say that's kind of something where I'd like to honestly make some personal improvements and learn a lot more than what I currently know.
Well, there's only one way to do that, and that's to get out there and put the boot leather in, spend time with your dogs. I'm very fortunate. I mean, I can take off pretty much 2 months of the year to hunt, and that's not a long time, but you know, I get, you know, 28, 30 days in September and 28, 30 days in December. And I'll spend a lot of my time with my dogs in the off season, which it sounds like what you're doing too. And that's the only way to learn them is you got to get them out there. You got to be out there. That's 9/10 of the problem, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And be a real, I think one thing too, that when you get into this, when you get hounds and you get into this lifestyle, because that's what it is, you have to make sure and remember that you need to set realistic expectations. If you don't have time to be out there every day with your dogs, you can't expect your dogs. I mean, this isn't always the case, but you can't expect your dogs to just go out there and be absolute rock stars and to be better than everybody else's. You're gonna, you know, you get, like with anything in life, you know, you're gonna get, you're gonna get the kind of work you put into something really shows and oftentimes equates to what you get at the end. Like for an end product. And so if you're working your dogs hard and doing everything you know to do, it's going to
be a bigger sort of reward at the end versus not being able to put that time in or just simply not putting the time in.
Yeah, there's a saying, and I may not quote it verbatim, but it says, don't complain about the results you didn't get for the work you didn't do.
Right.
I mean, that's it. You know, you can't take your dogs off a chain the day of season and expect them to perform at an optimal level. You just can't do it. And I think that's something that we all probably should, you know, set our expectations. And that goes all the way back to what this podcast is about. It's a journey. Man, Rome wasn't built in a day. Things don't happen overnight. You know, it takes time. Like, it takes time to acquire, you know, a pack of hounds that are proficient, consistent, and do what we want them to do. Like, it doesn't happen next week when Heath decides to take them out. You know, it takes years. And that's one of the things as hunters that we don't do enough of is we don't tell the whole story. You know, everybody, we've been talking about this. Everybody wants to see the cat in the tree, the bear in the tree, you know, the hog bait up, but they don't want to see, you know, you walking 3.5 miles out of the mountain in the rain, pouring down rain, soaked to your bones, not eat all day, carrying a bottle of water and 6 dog leads.
Oh man, there's been times where I've hardly made it out. Let me tell you.
Yes. I mean, that's not glorious. There's nothing about that's glorious. Nobody. I even talk myself off the ledge sometimes, like, what am I doing? Like, dude, come on. You're getting too old for this. But that love and desire I have for the outdoors and that partnership that I have with my dogs is why I do what I do. I had Craig Koshik on here a month ago, and you know, one of the things he said is everything I do is because, for, and with my dogs, and that's life. That's life here at the Hyatt House. It's because of the dogs. So, Aaron, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sharing your story. Continue to get them dogs out there and be successful. And maybe we'll pick this up later and we'll touch base and see where you're at. Like I said, I appreciate you sharing your journey with us. So at the end of every podcast, thank you for helping us teach, train, and learn about your journey.